Hello everyone, welcome to Denver Parks and Recreation at Home. My name is Melissa Garner. I am a certified fitness trainer with the city of Denver. Today I'm here to talk to you about how to increase intensity without increasing weight. A lot of times we find ourselves when we're working out at a gym that it's so easy, if an exercise gets easier, that you just are so impulsive to just increase the weight. And I'm here to tell you there are many ways that you can do that without just increasing the weight. So we're going to explore those things. So kind of just to give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. First, we're going to establish a foundation as far as weight selection goes and the exercises that you do. And then we'll look at your goals. That's going to result in what type of intensity that you're going to be working out at. And then there's some acute variables that we'll look at in regard to that. Also, then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of how to actually increase your intensity without increasing weight. And from there, we'll also look at the cardiovascular aspect of it and not just the resistance training. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So basically, when it comes to the foundational things of your workout program, just in general, you want to make sure your form and technique is impeccable. Now, how you do that is through a nice, strong core. So first and foremost, before you establish any type of resistance training program, you've got to make sure that you have a strong core. You have to make sure that you know how to activate it, that you know how to stabilize the things, and one of those ways to do that is through the athletic stance. So with an athletic stance, basically, what this consists of is your feet want to be about shoulder width apart, okay? Your knees are soft, so you never want your knees to be locked out. Knees are soft, your belly button is drawn in tight. So when you suck your belly button in like you're putting on a tight pair of jeans, that's activating your transverse abdominis. That is your internal weight belt. So you'll see some people walking around a gym with a weight belt. Literally, you have a muscle, a deep muscle that's in your abdominal wall that actually mimics that weight belt, okay? And that's called your transverse abdominis. And then you want to make sure your shoulders are back, your chest is up, everything is relaxed, and then now you're ready to perform whatever exercise that you're performing in the standing position, okay? So that is the athletic stance. You also really want to consider your mind-muscle connection. And all that means is, say I'm doing a bicep curl, right? And I'm going to tell myself, okay, the only way I'm going to lift this weight is if my bicep pulls that dumbbell up, okay? So you really just got to talk to your muscles, if you will, whatever the muscle it is that you're trying to work, to make sure that that muscle is the one that's pulling. Because a lot of time we'll use more momentum and we'll start swinging back and forth, and that just exempts the whole exercise. So really develop that mind-muscle connection to actually speak to the muscles that you're using and making sure that those are the muscles that are actually working, all right? And then master the movements, like we talked about a little bit with the form. Form is impeccable. Before you progress to another exercise or even increasing the intensity, you want to make sure that you have mastered that movement. It shouldn't be sloppy. I like to say do it with swag. Like, you want to make sure that everything is going smooth before you try to progress, okay? And then any exercise that you do perform, you want to make sure that it's done in a pain-free range of motion. You never should be experiencing sharp pain, pinching in your joints, cramping in your muscle. If you do, you need to stop the exercise. We need to make some modifications to the range of motion, but never try to push through those types of pains. Are your muscles going to burn? Yes, absolutely, but you need to do everything in a pain-free range of motion. So if you're doing a squat and you squat down and right about here you feel a sharp pain in your knees, then don't go that far. You can do a quarter squat, which is absolutely fine, okay? So pain-free range of motion, and then quality repetitions over quantity. I would rather have you do 5 quality repetitions than 15 messy ones. All right, so this goes back to the mind-muscle connection. This goes back to proper form and technique. This goes back to mastering the movement. You want to have quality repetitions in every single rep. If you start to notice that you're overcompensating or you're using momentum, then I need you to just, even if it's at the 6th rep of 12, take a break, get your athletic stance back together and then proceed. But don't compromise form at the sake of time or anything else. That is so important. Next, I want to look at the types of resistance. Okay, just in case I forgot anything, I'm going to say that this list is not all inclusive, but the obvious thing is your body weight. Okay, you can always start just using your body weight. I actually recommend that for a lot of people in different situations, but using your body weight is very important. So that's one type of resistance. You also have bands, any type of resistance bands or loops. You have free weights, and you have weight machines as well. You can use sand. There's a lot of objects that have sand in them. There's some objects that have water. So a lot of different things can be used as far as resistance is concerned. So those are just some of the options that you have to choose from. Now, in regard to that, when it comes to, well, Melissa, how do I even choose which weight I should start with? What you need to do is, say for example, we're going to do 12 repetitions. A great gauge and kind of a rule of thumb to go by is those last 2 to 3 repetitions should be very challenging. Not to say that you compromise form, okay, but you should be like questioning, am I actually going to be able to get through these last 2 to 3 repetitions, all right? So that is a great gauge. Now, if you're starting out and those first couple repetitions are super challenging and you're like, I'm already struggling at rep number 3, then you need to drop your weight down, okay? Even that last repetition, you guys, if you can't control the weight throughout all the reps, then drop the weight down, okay? It is completely okay. Again, master the exercise. Build the foundation first before you even try to progress to anything else, first and foremost. All right, so just to kind of reiterate a little bit more, don't compromise your form. If you start swinging, if you find your shoulders are starting to protract, you're starting to do all kinds of stuff to try to get the weight up, just stop, get back into your athletic stance, activate your core, and proceed. Or if you need to drop that weight, please humble yourself and just drop the weight so you can prevent any types of injury. All right, so now let's look at the intensity. So basically all intensity is how you're performing the exercise and what type of stress it's putting on your body. So we know that some exercises put more stress on our body than other exercises, so on and so forth. And so that's going to determine the percent of intensity that you're actually at when you're exercising. One key component when it comes to intensity is that as your intensity goes up, the duration goes down. Okay, as your intensity goes up, the duration goes down. So do not put an expectation on yourself to perform at a higher intensity for a longer duration. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen quality-wise, at least. So as your intensity goes up, the shorter amount of time that you're going to be able to sustain that exercise is actually going to go down. And that's not by accident, okay? So when you're looking at your intensity, you got to consider, well, what are your goals? What are your goals? That's going to determine the intensity, and that's going to actually determine what the acute variables are. So we're going to talk about that next. So when it comes to your goals, are you training for endurance purposes? Are you training to build your lean mass, or are you training for strength? Are you trying to increase your strength? Now, if you're just starting out, please don't start with strength training, because quite frankly, the endurance and the hypertrophy muscle building phases are designed as foundational things to get you to strength. You never want to just start with strength training first. You want to build the foundation and then progress your way through that foundation. So once you establish, am I trying to increase my endurance and my stamina? Am I trying to increase my lean mass? Or am I trying to increase my strength? The acute variables that go with that are how many repetitions you're going to do based off of which goal that you're trying to hit. And then from there, you're going to look at how many sets of that exercise you're going to do. And then from there, you're going to decide what your tempo is going to be when you're actually doing these repetitions. And then you'll look at what your rest period is going to be. Okay, so we know the basics of fitness. I might be doing 3 sets of 12, let's just say push-ups, for example. Okay, I'm making that determination because based off of the repetition range, I want to increase my lean mass. Okay, so there are certain criteria, if you will, that fall into each one of those categories, but all of those acute variables can be manipulated, and that's what I'm going to show you next, and that's how we actually can increase the intensity. So we've got our foundation established, we got our core strength established, we know how to do the movement. Now we're like, okay, I'm ready to move on or increase the intensity because this is getting a lot easier, and I want to do so without weight, which is going to be very valuable for those of you that are actually working out at home. When you're like, I don't have, X weight and dumbbells, so what am I supposed to do to make this exercise more intense? So let's talk about that now. So let's talk about the reps. Now you can manipulate the number of repetitions that you do with each exercise by doing AMRAPs. And all that means is you're doing as many repetitions as possible. Other people, it's also known as failure, okay? So you can do that exercise to failure. So instead of limiting it, I don't want to say limiting it, you can go past that 12 repetitions till you can't go no more. Okay, so you could do each set like that if you were still doing those 3 sets. So you could do 3 sets of AMRAPs and manipulate how many repetitions you're actually doing with that same weight that you were using in the first place, okay? The other acute variable as far as sets is concerned is you can also manipulate how many sets you do. You can add another set, maybe you were doing 3 sets and now you're doing 4 or 5 sets. That's absolutely fine with those same repetitions. You can do supersets, and what supersets are is basically you're just doing 2 exercises back to back, all right? And then you rest after that, and then you go into the next set of those 2 back-to-back exercises and rest, so on and so forth for however many rounds that you're doing it for. A tri-set is also another way to manipulate the amount of sets that you do, and basically tri means 3, so you're doing 3 exercises back-to-back before you rest, so on and so forth, and then you can keep going through that cycle as well. Anything above those tri-sets, you're looking at a circuit. You can make your whole workout into a circuit. Instead of resting, if you were doing individual exercises and you were having, let's say, 30 seconds rest in between each exercise, you could take that rest out, do all 6 exercises as a circuit, and then rest, and then go back and do 3 rounds of that. So you can mix it up and add a circuit to your workout. You can also manipulate the sets by doing compound sets. And basically all a compound set is you're compounding that muscle, okay? So basically, say for example, I'm doing chest press with dumbbells, and then I hit, I complete that first set, and then I get down on the floor and I knock out a set of push-ups. So you're doing, it's like a superset, but you're actually doing the same muscle group as far as the muscles that you're working, okay? And that's just a compound set. You can also do pyramids or drop sets where you manipulate the weight and the repetitions. So for example, if I was doing a drop set, say my bicep curl is 20 pounds, and I do that for 10 repetitions. And then I grab the 15s and I do that for 12 repetitions. And I grab the 10s and I do that for 15 repetitions. So as my weight goes down, am I doing that right? Yeah, as my weight goes down, my repetitions go up. Okay, or you can do vice versa. As your weight goes up, your repetitions go down. So there's many different ways to just manipulate the sets, right? So let's look at tempo. When it goes to concentric, so all concentric is your muscle contracting. Okay, so I'm going to grab these dumbbells, kind of show you. Okay, so we're just going to keep it basic with a curl. Again, I got my athletic stance, right? My core is activated. So the concentric phase of, I'll show you from the side, a concentric phase of a muscle contraction is the muscle contracting, okay? The eccentric phase, or the negative, a lot of people like to refer to, is your muscle lengthening. So on the concentric phase, your muscle is shortening, and on the eccentric phase, your muscle is lengthening. Okay, you can play with the tempo. So instead of doing like a, if you will, a regular or normal bicep curl where you're kind of going up and down, you can change it to I go up for 4 seconds, hold for 2, and then release it for 4. Okay, you can do a 10-second tempo where it's like going super, super, super slow, and your muscles are really firing and they're really burning. All right, you can also do isometrics to where your muscle is in a contractural, this is not an isometric, your muscle has to be contracted, and you're holding that. And say you do, on one side you do 12 regular reps, or you do a 4 down and a 2 up. You can just play with, there's so many different variations, but isometrically we're just holding it, all right? And we're holding it for whatever duration of time that, that needs to happen. So you can definitely play with the rest, with the tempo when it comes to increasing the intensity as far as tempo is concerned. Now, you can mess with your rest periods. You know, again, depending on if your goal is endurance, if your goal is hypertrophy, lean mass building, or if your goal is strength, you can also play with the rest periods. So you can do rest pause sets. And basically what a rest pause set is you perform 12 repetitions, right? You perform one regular set. You rest for your allotted time. Say I'm resting for 30 seconds. But then that second set, I'm going to as many reps as possible. I'm doing an AMRAP or I'm going to failure. Okay, I go to failure and then I wait about 10, 20 seconds and then I go to failure again. All right, so there are so many different variations that you guys can play with before you even think about increasing your weight. Another way to manipulate the rest is an active rest. So you can knock out your exercise and then you can jump rope. You could knock out your bent over rows and then you can get down and do mountain climbers. So you're still working, but you're not necessarily working the muscle that you were using with the resistance, and you're doing something else to kind of keep your heart rate up. So you can do an active rest set as well. Outside of that, we can look at, typically with foundational things, you're doing stuff with both feet, right? Well, you can change that up, and go to one leg. And now you've activated your stabilization and you're activating your core and you're just doing a bicep curl from one leg. You can do one arm things instead of doing both at the same time. You can just do one thing with one arm and the other one's holding isometrically, kind of how I demonstrated earlier. And then once you progress from there, you can go to an unstable surface. And then you would just go through that progression the same way. You start with 2 feet on a Bosu ball and you're doing shoulder presses. Let's do a different exercise. You're doing shoulder presses on a Bosu, and then from there, that got easy. All right, so before I increase my weight, I'm gonna do standing on one leg on a Bosu, doing a shoulder press. So you can just manipulate the surfaces. They have Dynex pads and just things that Dynadisc that you can stand on. So there's different ways to manipulate even whatever you're standing on. All right, so that kind of concludes as far as the resistance is concerned. And one thing I do want to discuss is cardiovascular training. All cardiovascular means is your heart and your lungs. So we have to also train our heart and lungs. Now, the nice thing about resistance training and manipulating the acute variables is you can get your heart rate up when you're doing resistance training. And that's just by manipulating those sets. You can do the back-to-back, you can do the circuit, so on and so forth, which will also get your heart rate up. Now, the thing with that is you do want to also train your heart and your lungs for a sustainable or a longer duration of time. And a lot of people like to do that through HIIT training. And what HIIT training is high-intensity interval training. And you can manipulate even the variables as far as the period of full exertion and the recovery period. Okay, so the high intensity interval is I'm doing something for, let's say, up to 30 seconds, and I might be exerting 70 to 90% of my physical capacity to perform. You never want to do anything at like 100%, and I don't think you really can unless you're in your fight or flight response. But nonetheless, if you're working out and you want to do some HIIT training, say on a spin bike, you would want to exert yourself 70-90% of your ability to go all out. And you can only maintain that, again, because as intensity increases, the duration decreases. So you would maintain that for about 30 seconds. Now, this is where a lot of people lose the HIIT training, and they don't get the results that they want because they kind of do it incorrectly, and that's they don't take that time to fully recover. It is very important. The recovery in HIIT training, that recovery phase, is very important to actually getting the results that you want. Okay, so they say up to 90 seconds. It should take you up to 90 seconds to recover from one high intensity interval. Now, if you find that that's not enough time, as you get more conditioned or more in shape, your recovery will be a lot faster. And that is a great non-scale victory to consider if you're doing interval training. Because, like, for example, I started doing interval training on the treadmill where I was jogging pretty quick. I wasn't sprinting, but I was jogging pretty quick. It was about 70-80% of my max. And then the first few times I did it, it took me over a minute to recover, right? And so now I can recover in about 20 to 40 seconds because I'm more conditioned than I was from the beginning. But that recovery time is so important. And basically what that looks like, you know, when you're performing at 70 to 90% exertion, you may not be able to have a conversation with somebody. You may not be able to talk because you're really breathing a lot and really trying to catch your breath. Once you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm good, and you literally will feel it, like, okay, I'm good, I'm ready to go again, you've recovered, you can have a quality conversation with somebody, that's a great indication that you have fully recovered and you can go into that next round of your HIIT. So again, depending on your level of conditioning will depend on how quickly you recover or the lack thereof, and so you can apply that. But you can perform HIIT on stairs, you can do it walking on the treadmill, you can do it outdoors, you can do it on a spin bike, you can do it on a step master. There's really a row machine, so there are really a lot of options that you have when it comes to HIIT training and cardiovascular conditioning. So I hope this helps you guys just to kind of give you a big overview of everything that we talked about today. We start with your foundation. You've got to have a nice core strength. You got to know how the exercises are supposed to be performed. You need to have impeccable form and technique. Establish that foundation. That is so important. And then obviously you know your goals, or you need to come up with whatever you want your goal to be, because that's going to determine what your program looks like. That's going to determine those acute variables of how many sets you do and how many repetitions, what your tempo is going to be, and your rest period. All right, so you got to have that established so you even know at what intensity that you should be performing. And then just know that you don't just have to go up and wait every time you want to increase your intensity, right? You can do that by manipulating how many reps you can go to failure. You can add a superset, a tricep. You can make your workout into a circuit. You can do pyramids. You can do drop sets, so on and so forth. You can manipulate the tempo. You can go down super slow, come up super slow. You can do 4-count concentric contractions. You can do 5-count eccentric. You can hold it isometrically for 30 seconds. And then you can manipulate your rest as far as maybe you're doing something active during your rest period, okay? But you're training or you're working a different muscle group, or you're doing something as far as like jump rope to kind of help with that cardiovascular training. And then, you know, mess with the foundation. You know, you're stable with 2 legs, you drop over to 1 leg, you stand on a Bosu ball, you stand on a Dynadisc, and then you do 1 leg from there. So, and then you can always incorporate HIIT training as far as that concerns. So there's so many variables that you can mess with and manipulate and play with and try this and try that. The moral of this story is that you do want your body to adapt. Okay, so don't be so diverse in everything that you're doing that you never give your body a chance to adapt to what you're doing. You know, you want to adapt, you don't want to plateau. Plateau is when you're not getting results anymore, and that's also a good indication of when you need to actually increase your intensity. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, my name is Melissa Garner, and I'm a certified personal trainer with Denver Parks and Recreation. You guys be healthy and have a great day.